and hear the little bells jingling on her Indian skirt when I arrived at 9 o'clock the Saturday after my birthday. It had been a horrible week at home, now that the news was out about Dad. Mum was no longer trying to hide her emotions and would grab any of us who passed within arm's reach in long, tight hugs that took every ounce of my self-restraint not to break out of. I'd never been a very huggy person, unless the bestower was Samantha, as I'd recently discovered. Pete wouldn't talk about it at all, and was in a massive mood with me for leaving his rucksack and sleeping bag at Greenham, even though I kept saying he'd get it back, and if he didn't, I'd buy him new ones. Dad looked worse every day. Now that I knew, I couldn't believe I hadn't noticed before. It was as if he was shrinking before our eyes. I couldn't take it in. School was increasingly tedious, and I couldn't concentrate on my A-levels because my head was so full of panic. Panic about Dad's condition, panic about never seeing Samantha again. I hadn't heard a word from her. Panic about failing my exams. So it was a relief to get to work on Saturday, and I'd been dying to compare notes with Caitlin about the teddy bear's picnic. The shop door was unlocked when I arrived, but the shutters were still down. Alaric, Serum Disc's owner, was behind the shop counter, making himself a cup of tea from the kettle in the alcove. He didn't offer to make me one. In fact, he had a face like a slapped arse, probably because he loathed getting up before 11, especially on a Saturday. "Where's Caitlin?" He scratched his black stubble and scowled. "In prison." "What?" "She only went and got herself arrested at Greenham Common last weekend." I ripped off my jacket, joined him behind the counter and hung it on the back of the battered swivel chair next to the till. "Oh my God! Actually, I got arrested there last weekend too." I couldn't keep the pride out of my voice. "But how come she's in prison? I got released with a warning. She doesn't have any previous, does she?" I said previous oh so casually, the vocabulary of being arrested tripping off my tongue as if it was a regular occurrence. Alaric didn't seem impressed, though. "Well, actually, she's not in prison as such, not at the moment. But she's been charged and she's out on bail. She's had to go and stay with her folks in Cornwall pending a trial, which might not be for a few months." Pressing the open button on the till, I enjoyed as always the satisfyingly heavy ka-chunk sound as the drawer shot out, even while my mind was reeling from the news of Caitlin's tribulations. I began emptying the float into the tray compartments from the plastic bags full of coin denominations that Alaric had dumped next to it. This was one of my favourite jobs at work, reminding me of the toy till I had when I was about 9, and how much I'd loved compartmentalising coppers even back then. As I did it, I felt a huge surge of guilty relief at briefly escaping the stifling, sad atmosphere at home. The knowledge of Dad's imminent demise was so crushing that I found myself repeatedly trying to ignore it altogether, pretend it wasn't happening, which was a lot easier to manage when I was busy elsewhere. "Don't do that yet," Alaric said irritably. "Shutters aren't even up." I rolled my eyes, making sure he couldn't see me. I hated opening the shutters. They were so heavy and had a tendency to come sliding back down with a huge screech and thud if you didn't click them into place fast enough at the top. "Okay, but why's Caitlin been sent to trial? Surely not just for trespassing." Alaric took a milk bottle from his satchel and popped the foil top, pouring it into his tea. "She didn't go into too many details on the phone, but she's been charged with GBH. Apparently she poked a copper in the face with a stick while avoiding arrest. He's been blinded in one eye. I reckon she's looking at doing time. A couple of years at least." Shit! I was horrified. As I went outside and grappled with the heavy shutters, my mind reeled. I felt sorry for Caitlin. I could see how easy it might be, in the heat and fear of dozens of angry uniformed men charging at us, shouting and swearing, to lash out in self-defence. If I'd had a stick in my hands before I was bodily carried off the silo, who was to say I wouldn't have done the same? Caitlin was tiny, about 7 stone. No wonder she'd felt that she needed to defend herself. I imagined the devastation on my folks' faces if they'd had to actually bail me out, then sit in the public gallery watching me be tried in a court of law. It was bad enough having just been arrested. I felt a cold sweat of horror at my recklessness, and relief at having been let off without charge, especially in the light of the discovery of